I'd come to Spain on a whim, fleeing the suffocating sameness of my life back in Portland, Oregon, a string of dead-end graphic design gigs and relationships that fizzled like wet fireworks. Seville promised reinvention, flamenco rhythms pulsing through tapas bars, the scent of orange blossoms thick enough to drown in, and a chance to sketch the ochre walls and wrought iron balconies that whispered stories of passion and loss. I rented a tiny apartment above a bakery on Calle Feria, where the air always smelled of fresh churros and regret, and that's where I first spotted Evelyn's salon, Tijeras y Sueños, Scissors and Dreams, tucked into a faded blue building with geraniums spilling from every window box. She was cutting a client's hair when I walked in that first afternoon, her hands moving with the precision of a surgeon and the grace of a dancer. Mid-30s, I guessed, with chestnut hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun that somehow accentuated the sharp lines of her jaw and the soft curve of her neck. Her name tag read Evelyn, but the way she bantered in flawless Spanish laced with a faint American twang, California, maybe, made her feel like home in this foreign heat. "What'll it be, chica?" she asked, eyeing my overgrown bob with a smirk that crinkled the corners of her eyes. I told her to make me look like I belonged here, not some wide-eyed transplant chasing ghosts. As the scissors snipped away the old me, we talked. She was from San Diego, she'd said, married young to a Marine who dragged her across oceans until he didn't come back from a deployment in the Middle East. Widowed at 28, she'd washed up in Seville 5 years ago, chasing the sun to outrun the shadows. "Spain's got a way of cracking you open," she murmured, tilting my head to catch the light. "Makes you face what you've been hiding." Her fingers brushed my scalp, sending sparks down my spine, and I wondered if she felt it too, the electric hum between us, like a live wire stripped bare. Over the next weeks, my appointments became rituals. I'd linger after, nursing a café con leche while she swept clippings into neat piles, our conversations weaving from the mundane to the marrow. She confessed her love for Goya's dark canvases, how they'd mirrored her grief. I shared sketches of Seville's hidden courtyards, places where secrets bloomed like jasmine at dusk. One evening, as the salon emptied and the city hummed with pre-festival energy, I mustered the courage. "Evelyn, there's something about you. I can't stop thinking," but she cut me off with a laugh, light but edged. "Everly, honey, I'm flattered, but I'm as straight as these streets. Got a date with a guy from the market tomorrow. Fisherman. Built like a god." It stung, but I played it cool, nodding like it was nothing, even as my chest tightened. Still, I kept going back, drawn by the way her laugh lit the room, the subtle way she'd lean in when I talked about my ex, a woman who'd left me for the predictability of a picket fence. "Men are simpler," Evelyn said once, wiping down her station. "No games, no expectations. Just steady." But her eyes would drift, lingering on the curve of my neck in the mirror, and I'd catch her watching me leave, her reflection a ghost in the glass. The push happened after the Feria de Abril, Seville's April fair, when the city dissolved into a kaleidoscope of polka-dot dresses, sevillanas dancing under lanterns, and rebujitos flowing like rivers of sweet rebellion. I'd gone alone, my sketchbook heavy with half-finished portraits, but fate, or maybe just bad luck, thrust us together. I spotted her in the crowd, twirling with that fisherman, her laughter bright but brittle, like it might shatter under the weight of the music. Emboldened by a few glasses of manzanilla, I waited until the night thinned, found her slipping away from the casetas toward the quieter alleys. "Evelyn," I called, my voice cutting through the distant strum of guitars. She turned, her cheeks flushed, her white blouse untucked and glowing in the moonlight. "Everly. What are you?" "I had to tell you," I blurted, stepping close enough to smell the sherry on her breath, the faint citrus of her shampoo. "That day in the salon, I meant it. I feel something real here. With you." The words hung between us, vulnerable as a flamenco cry. For a heartbeat, her face softened, her hand lifting as if to touch mine. Then it hardened, and she shoved me, not hard enough to bruise, but enough to pin me against the wall, her body inches from mine, heat radiating like a fever. "Stop," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You don't know what you're asking." "I'm not. I can't." And then she was gone, heels clicking into the night, leaving me slumped in the rain that had just begun to fall. The next morning dawned brutal, the sun a hammer on my pounding skull. I woke to the scent of baking bread wafting up from the bakery below, but it did nothing to soothe the ache. My phone buzzed, a text from an old Portland friend, checking in, but I ignored it. Instead, I dragged myself to the mirror, staring at the woman Evelyn had sculpted from my chaos, shorter hair, layered and alive, framing eyes that now looked too wide, too hopeful. What had I expected? A straight widow with walls higher than the Giralda Tower to suddenly unravel for me. I almost skipped the salon that day, my standing Thursday trim. But inertia, or masochism, pulled me there. The bell above the door tinkled like a warning, and there she was, perched on a stool, staring at a lock of hair twirled around her finger. No clients yet, the place empty save for the hum of the AC and the faint radio crooning old American country tunes. She looked up, and for a second, I thought she'd bolt. Instead, she slid off the stool, her movement slow, deliberate. "Everly," she said, voice rough as gravel. "Sit. Please." I did, cape snapping around my neck like a noose. Her hands trembled as she sectioned my hair, the scissors hovering but not cutting. Silence stretched, thick as the heat outside. Finally, she spoke, her breath warm against my ear. "Last night. I didn't mean to. Push me away." I finished, sharper than intended. "Literally." She winced, fingers stilling. "It's not that simple. You think I don't feel it? That pull. God, Everly, you're like sunlight cracking through storm clouds. But I'm terrified. After losing Marco, I built this life. Steady. Safe. With men who don't ask me to look too deep inside." I twisted to face her, cape crinkling. "And what if I want to see it all? The cracks, the light, everything." Her eyes met mine, green depths swirling with storms I hadn't noticed before. "Then you'd see a woman who's lied to herself for years. Pretended the ache for something more was just grief. But it's not. It's you. It's this." She gestured vaguely, encompassing the salon, the city, us. The door chimed then, a client interrupting, but as she turned away, her hand brushed mine, a deliberate graze, electric. That afternoon, as she trimmed and styled, we talked in fragments, stolen between spritzes of hairspray. She admitted the fisherman was a rebound, a habit, not a home. I shared stories of Portland's rainy queerness, pride parades that felt like family, the quiet terror of coming out to conservative folks back home. By closing time, the air between us hummed with possibility, fragile as a spider's web. We walked out together, the sun dipping low, painting the Guadalquivir River in golds and crimsons. At a corner cafe, over glasses of Tinto de Verano, she reached across the table, her fingers lacing with mine. "One date," she said, voice barely above the murmur of passers-by. "No promises. Just see what happens." My heart soared, a flamenco dancer mid-leap. We spent that evening wandering the Alcazar gardens, moonlight filtering through palm fronds, her laughter freer, her touch lingering. She told me about her first crush, a girl in high school, tomboyish and bold, whose kiss behind the bleachers had set her world ablaze before fear doused it. "I buried it," she confessed, leaning against an ancient archway. "Married Marco to prove I was normal. But normal's a cage, Everly." By midnight, as we kissed under the stars, soft, tentative, tasting of wine and wonder, I thought maybe Seville really could crack us open, let the light flood in. But cracks have a way of spiderwebbing into chasms, and ours started small, a missed call here, a shadowed glance there. 2 weeks blurred into a haze of stolen moments, lazy mornings in my apartment, her head on my pillow, sunlight tracing the freckles on her shoulders, evenings at hidden jazz clubs in Triana, where her hand in mine felt like defiance against the world's watchful eyes. Evelyn was a revelation, fierce in her vulnerability, her touches mapping me like uncharted territory, her stories peeling back layers I'd only glimpsed in the salon's mirror. "You're teaching me to breathe again," she'd whisper, her American drawl wrapping around the words like a promise. Yet beneath the romance, shadows lurked. She'd tense at sudden noises, her eyes darting to windows as if expecting ghosts. Marco's death haunted her, not just in memories but in letters from his family back in San Diego, unsent replies piling up on her nightstand, accusations veiled as concern. "You're wasting away in that godforsaken place, Evelyn. Come home. Find a real man." I'd find her staring at them, jaw set, and when I'd reach for her, she'd pull back, murmuring, "Not now. It's too much." I understood, or tried to. My own baggage wasn't light. The ex who'd gaslit me into doubting my worth, the parents who'd prayed away my queerness with church potlucks and tough love. But Spain felt like permission, a land where history bent but didn't break under the weight of forbidden loves, where Lorca's verses echoed in every plaza. We built our world in whispers, picnics by the river with Manchego and Membrillo, her teaching me Sevillana's steps that ended in breathless embraces, me sketching her portrait by candlelight, capturing the way her smile hid storms. The betrayal came on a sweltering June afternoon, the kind where the siesta feels like surrender. I'd planned a surprise, a weekend in Ronda, that cliffside town where bridges span gorges like fragile hopes. I texted her from the market, arms laden with figs and jamon, my heart light as the vendors' banter. No reply. By evening, worry gnawed, had the heat felled her. A client emergency. I headed to the salon, the streets alive with buskers and the sizzle of street food. The door was ajar, the Cerrado sign crooked. Inside, voices, hers, low and laced with something brittle, and a man's, deep, accented with Andalusian warmth. I froze in the doorway, unseen, as the scene unfolded like a gut punch. There was Javier, the fisherman from the fair, broad-shouldered and sun-kissed, his arms around her waist, her face buried in his chest. "I can't keep pretending, Ev," he murmured, stroking her hair. "We've danced around this for months. Marry me. Make it real." She didn't pull away. Instead, her hands clutched his shirt, knuckles white. "Javier, Marco's family, they're coming next week. They think you're the one. Steady. Safe. If I say no, they'll drag me back to San Diego, lock me in that life I escaped." Her voice cracked, and he tilted her chin up, kissing her forehead, tender, possessive. "Then say yes. We can be happy. Forget the complications." Complications. That's what I was. My stomach roiled, the figs in my bag turning to lead. I backed out silently, the door's chime swallowed by the roar in my ears. Rain, impossible in June, started falling as I ran, not to my apartment but to the riverbank, where I sank onto the mud, sobs mingling with the downpour. Betrayal wasn't the kiss I hadn't witnessed, it was the lie she'd lived, that one date that had bloomed into us now withering under the weight of her fear. She'd played both worlds, mine in shadows, his in sunlight, never choosing, never risking. That night, she showed up at my door, soaked and wild-eyed, Javier's cologne faint on her skin. "Everly, wait, let me explain." But I was done waiting. "Explain what?" "That I'm your experiment. Your escape hatch until real life calls." Words flew like shrapnel, her tears, my accusations, the room shrinking around us. "I love you," she choked out, reaching for me. "But love isn't enough when the world's waiting to bury you. Isn't it?" I shot back, voice raw. "You pushed me once to keep your walls up. Don't think you can rebuild them around me now." She left at dawn, the door clicking like a final edit in one of her cuts, snip, and the story shortened. The days that followed were a blur of avoidance, cancelled appointments, detours around her street, sketches abandoned half-finished. Seville, once a canvas, turned accusatory, every orange tree mocking my naivety, every couple entwined a reminder of what I'd lost. Friends back home sensed the fracture through my sparse texts, dumped the drama, EVs. Fly back. But leaving felt like defeat, like letting her win the narrative. Then came the letter, from Marco's sister, slipped under my door by mistake, or maybe not. Evelyn's always run from truth, it read, penned in looping cursive. She loved my brother, but even then, her eyes wandered. Don't let her break you like she breaks herself. It was meant for Javier, I realized, a warning passed like contraband. But it cracked something in me, not anger, but pity. Evelyn wasn't a villain, she was a woman at war with her own heart, collateral damage in a battle she'd never enlisted for. I confronted her at the salon a week later, the place humming with afternoon clients, oblivious to the storm between us. She was mid-cut, scissors poised, when I stormed in. We need to talk. Now. The client, a chatty abuela, clucked sympathetically as Evelyn led me to the back room, storeroom of dyes and dreams deferred. You read it, she said flatly, not a question. I nodded, thrusting the letter at her. Why didn't you tell me? About the pressure, the family, the real cage. Her laugh was bitter, echoing off the shelves. Because admitting it means admitting I'm weak. That I want you, God, I do, Everly, more than air, but choosing you means torching the bridge back. No safety net. Just us, falling. Then fall, I urged, stepping close, the scent of her, lavender and regret, pulling me in despite everything. With me. We build the net together. For a moment she wavered, her hand lifting to trace my jaw. The air thickened, charged with the possibility of mending. But then the front bell rang, Javier, his voice booming a greeting, and her hand dropped. I can't. Not yet. She turned away, shoulders slumping, and I left her there, the door slamming like a guillotine. The climax built like a habub, that desert wind Marco had once described, sudden, all-consuming. It hit during the Corpus Christi procession, Seville's streets a river of candles and incense, penitents in pointed hoods shuffling under the weight of faith. I'd gone to lose myself in the crowd, but fate, that cruel Sevillian puppeteer, strung us together again. There, amid the throng, I saw her, Evelyn, arm-linked with Javier, his family trailing like a somber entourage, Marco's sister among them, eyes sharp as daggers. They were announcing the engagement, whispers rippling, at last, she's settling. Our eyes met across the sea of faces, hers pleading, mine shattering. I pushed through, the crowd parting like a biblical wave, until I stood before her. Evelyn, I said, loud enough to halt the murmurs. Is this it? The steady you chose over us? Javier stiffened, the family gasping, but she wrenched free, dragging me into a shadowed alcove off the avenue. Everly, please, don't do this here. Then where? When? You've had months. Tears streamed, hot as the wax dripping from nearby candles. You betrayed us both, me with your half-truths, him with your heart elsewhere. But mostly yourself. She crumpled then, sliding down the wall, the same wall from that rainy night, irony's cruel echo. I know, she sobbed, face in hands. I pushed you because I saw my future in your eyes, free, whole. But freedom terrifies me. What if I fail you? What if I'm not enough? The procession thundered past, chants rising like judgment, but in that alcove, time suspended. I knelt, pulling her hands away, forcing her to see me. You're enough. We both are. But love demands choice, Evelyn. Not safety. Not halfway. Her gaze searched mine, raw and reckoning. Then, slowly, she nodded, once, twice. Okay. God help me, okay. She stood, wiping her face, and we emerged together, her hand firm in mine. Javier waited, confusion etching his features, the family a frozen tableau. I'm sorry, she said to him, voice steady for the first time. I love you as a friend, but not like that. Not ever. To his sister, tell them I'm done running. This is my life. The fallout was swift, shouts, tears, a sister's hissed, you'll regret this, Javier's quiet nod of understanding, he'd suspected, he said later, over beers in a Triana bar. But in the chaos, Evelyn chose me, us, her grip unyielding as we walked away, the procession's lights fading behind. In the quiet aftermath, Seville exhaled with us, the summer heat softening into something bearable, like grief tempered by time. We didn't rush, nights tangled in sheets that smelled of salt and citrus, mornings over cortados where we dissect the wreckage, piecing truths from the debris. Evelyn closed the salon for a week, for renovations, she told the regulars, but really for us. Long walks along the river, where she'd talk through the letters she'd burn one by one, ashes scattering like released sins. I was so afraid of becoming my mother, she confessed one dusk, as swallows wheeled overhead. Widowed young, clinging to normalcy like a life raft. But you showed me normal's just another word for numb. I nodded, sketching the curve of her profile against the sunset. And you showed me that love isn't a sketch, it's the mess, the eraser marks, the bold lines that scare you. We'd laugh then, tentative at first, then full-throated, the sound chasing shadows from the corners. Betrayal's scar lingered, though, not in distrust, but in hypervigilance. I'd catch her staring at her phone, Marco's family's voicemails deleted but echoing, I'd wake from dreams of her hand slipping from mine in crowds. Counseling helped, a queer expat therapist in the Barrio Santa Cruz, her office a haven of potted ferns and rainbow flags. Trauma bonds us, but choice unbinds, she'd say, and we'd nod, hands clasped under the table, learning the language of repair. Fall brought change, leaves turning gold on the plane trees, the city layering shawls against the chill. Evelyn reopened the salon with a new sign, Tijeras y Verdades, scissors and truths, and I started freelancing illustrations for local magazines, my work infused with her, portraits of women mid-laugh, eyes alight with unspoken stories. Javier became an unlikely ally, inviting us to his boat for sunset sails, his easy grin a bridge over the awkwardness. You too glow, he'd say, popping a cerveza. Like you finally found your current. Marco's family cut her off, as predicted, no Christmas cards, no pleas to return. It hurt, a dull throb, but Evelyn mourned it publicly, at a small gathering of salon friends in my apartment, toasts to the brother she'd loved, the life she'd honored, the future she'd claim. Grief isn't a chain, she said, raising her glass, tears glinting like stars. It's a compass. We danced that night to Nina Simone on the record player, her body fitting mine like a missing piece, and for the first time, I believed in happy, not the fairy tale kind, but the hard one, humanistic sort, where joy coexists with the jagged edges. Winter crept in with its Sirocco winds, but we weathered it cocooned, holidays strung with lights on my balcony, exchanging gifts wrapped in newsprint, her, a leather-bound sketchbook etched with, for the woman who sees me, a locket with a tiny photo of us in Ronda, windswept and grinning. New Year's Eve, we watched fireworks from the Metropole parasol, that wooden honeycomb marvel, her head on my shoulder. Last year, I pushed you away, she murmured. This year, I pull you closer. Spring circled back, Feria's banners fluttering like rebirth. We danced together this time, me in a borrowed Manton de Manila, her in a traje de flamenco that hugged her like a second skin. No hiding in alleys, we spun in the casetas, her family's absence a ghost we'd learned to poltergeist-proof. One night, under the lantern's glow, she knelt, not with a ring, but with a vow. Everly Hayes, you've cracked me open, filled the hollows marry me. Not for safety, but for the storm. Tears blurred the lights, but I nodded, pulling her up into a kiss that tasted of freedom. Yes. To all of it, the drama, the depth, the dance. The wedding was small, quintessentially ours, a civil ceremony in the Alcazar's rose gardens, witnesses a mix of salon clients, Portland friends flown in, and Javier toasting with salty sincerity. I wore a simple white suit, evoking my Portland roots, she, a flowing gown in ivory lace, Spanish flair meets California ease. Vows exchanged in English and Spanish, promises of honesty over perfection, of choosing each other daily. In the light and the lie, she said, and I echoed, in the push and the pull. Life post-vows wasn't plotless bliss, no dramatic bows, just the steady rhythm of building. We bought a fixer-upper casita in Triana, walls peeling but potential thick as the river mist. Mornings, she'd cut hair while I worked from a sunlit studio. Evenings, we'd cook paella with too much saffron, argue over playlists, her country crooners versus my indie folk, and make love like it was discovery anew. Conflicts arose, of course, her flare-ups of doubt on anniversaries of Marco's death, my insecurities when clients flirted too freely. But we faced them head-on, therapy our anchor, forgiveness our oar. 1 year on, during a quiet feria, I found her in the alley behind the old salon, now leased to a young stylist we'd mentored. She wasn't pushing, she was leaning against the wall, eyes closed, breathing deep. "Remember?" she asked as I approached. How could I forget? I slipped my arms around her waist. "The night you showed me your side, the real one." She turned, kissing me soft. "And you showed me mine. Still do." Seville, that eternal storyteller, watched us walk away, hand in hand, toward whatever chapter next. Not every tale ends in tragedy or triumph. Some, the humanistic ones, end in continuation, the quiet heroism of loving through the cracks, choosing light over the lie, and finding, in the push and pull, a home that holds. In the end, it wasn't the push that defined us, but the pull, the unexpected side that bloomed from pain into something profoundly, imperfectly true. And in America's shadow across the ocean, where I'd once fled conformity, I found my own brand of freedom, 2 women, woven from drama and dreams, dancing on the edge of forever.